I now have the distinct privilege of introducing our keynote speaker, Superior Court Judge Rick King. He served 2 years in Vietnam with the Navy Seabees as a heavy equipment operator. He has a BA from UCLA and a Juris Doctorate from the University of San Diego. Judge King worked with the Office of the General Counsel for the Department of Veteran Affairs. He was a homicide prosecutor for 15 years within the Orange County District Attorney's Office and is currently OC Superior Court Judge on complex criminal jury trials. Judge King was appointed to the Superior Court by Governor Gray Davis in the year 2000. He was also appointed Chief Justice, California Interagency Council on Veterans, and he's also a member of the Freedom Committee of Orange County that I also belong to. I now call the Honorable Rick King to the podium.
Good morning. I hope everybody can hear me. First off, I want to thank the City of Fountain Valley and our local VFW post for inviting me here. It's such an honor to be able to speak on a day of remembrance for those who sacrificed their lives for the protection of our country. Vietnam was a very divisive war. It caused a very popular president to not seek re-election in 1968. There was a lot of, it sparked a lot of campus unrest, much of what very similar to what we see right now. And when the last combat troops left Vietnam in 1973, the country pretty much was done with Vietnam and they wanted to forget it. But to the almost 3 million veterans who actually served on the ground, many of them, they could not forget it. Post-traumatic stress, alcoholism, suicide thoughts, they had that. And what we hear now, thank you for your service, was just not in the nomenclature back in the late 60s and the early 70s. That started to change. But also what was a big void is that the 58,000 plus who actually died in combat in Vietnam, their families could not move on. So there was a movement in the late 70s, and we started to have individuals who served in Vietnam into Congress. People that come to mind is Senator John McCain, who was a prisoner of war for many years. We had Senator John Kerry, who was a Silver Star recipient in the Brown Water Navy. We had Robert Carey, who was with the Navy SEALs, who was a recipient of the Medal of Honor. And in the late 70s, the first Vietnam veteran was appointed to head the Veterans Administration, an individual by the name of Max Cleland, who was a triple amputee, lost both legs and an arm over in Vietnam. And as a result, programs started to become developing. Many of the programs are in existence today to help the veterans now from the Gulf War, when they come back, cope with those situations that I mentioned: post-traumatic stress, suicidal thoughts, alcoholism. But there was also a movement in the late 70s by an individual by the name of Jan Scruggs. He was an infantryman in Vietnam in the late 60s. He was wounded, and he started a movement to remember the 58,000 plus who gave their lives in Vietnam. And what turned out then was the creation of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial that is now in our nation's capital. And I just want to share with you a couple of thoughts behind that, the design of it, and then I'm going to take you to Vietnam shortly. It was decided that the names of all of those, including the missing in action, would be inscribed in the wall. It was decided that the wall would not be the traditional white marble. Instead, it would be black marble. And the reason for that wasn't because of any type of a protest or any kind of a statement. Is because black marble, when you polish it, it's reflective. And so the loved ones that would come and see the names of the ones that they lost in that conflict can not only see the names, but they can see themselves and they can reflect upon the tremendous loss that they had. The most important decision that was made was that the names would not be in alphabetical order. There were over 600 Smiths who were killed in action. There were 100 Lopez's. And the decision was made to put their names in chronological order the day they died. And the thought behind that was that if you're in combat, and it's a very intense situation, you form a bond that's very thick with your fellow soldiers. You need that bond for when you come under an attack. And so the thought was, when they died together, and they'll be placed in the memorial together. And the Vietnam Memorial comes to a vortex of, I think the angle is 135 degrees. The west wall of it goes to the Lincoln Memorial. The east wall goes to the Washington Monument. The first person who was killed in action in Vietnam is right at the vortex of the east wall. The last person who was killed in Vietnam in 1975 at the embassy guards, they are at the last panel on the west wall. And all of the names then go down and they turn around back on the east wall. So the other thing that was important about the creation of this wall was that it'd only be names. There wouldn't be ranks. There wouldn't be statements. It would be merely names. And it was basically a timeline of our involvement in Vietnam. So with that backdrop, I'd just like to spend a few moments with you about Vietnam. I went to Vietnam when I was 20 years old in the fall of 1967. I was a Seabee. I was introduced. I don't know if any of you know what Seabees are, but they're construction forces. I basically operated a bulldozer, all right? I operated power shovel, I operated cranes, I was a blaster. That was all from my beginnings in the Midwest. I was in the Operating Engineers Union out of East St. Louis. And the Seabees became famous probably with John Wayne, a movie called The Fighting Seabees that you can probably get on Netflix. I'm not plugging Netflix or anything else, all right? But I went to Vietnam in the fall of 1967 as a 20-year-old. In January, I was then assigned to a detachment of 180 of us that went up north to a village right on the Central Coast called Phu Bai. And our mission was to develop a rock quarry and a crusher to get it into operation, develop road rock to expand the main convoy route that went from Da Nang up to the DMZ, called Highway 1. And it was at that time that something else was going on, which was the Tet Offensive of 1968. And that was a major, major battle in which the enemy coordinated attacks throughout the major cities up and down Vietnam, including Da Nang, Hue, and Saigon. We were up there for about 2 months. We actually stripped the vegetation and started to develop the quarry. And during that time, there was a lot of enemy activity. And we came under attack. And Seabees, we don't go out in patrols, but we do fight back, all right? And we had mortar teams that would return the fire. We would go to our foxholes with our M16s, and we did suffer casualties. And on occasion, other military institutions, so to speak, would come in. We had helicopters come in, and we had tanks from the Marines that would come in. And these were 8-inch tanks. They were howitzers. And in the eyes of the enemy, these tanks were not a good thing. They could, with pinpoint accuracy, and this was years before satellites, with calling in grids and what have you, they could hit a target 20 miles with a 200-pound projectile. And so in the eyes of the enemy, this was a very lethal weapon. On March 30th of 1968, 2 such tanks came into our camp. And when they came into our camp, down the road, about 4 miles north, there was a platoon of Marines. They were assigned to guard and provide security for a bridge. And late in the evening, a combined force of 200 North Vietnamese and Viet Cong attacked the bridge. And the Marines called in to the 8-inch tanks that are in our camp. And they then started delivering fire to the point that at about 2 o'clock in the morning, the enemy sent mortar and recoilless rifle teams up in the hills above our camp. And their mission was to attempt to knock out those 8-inch tanks. And they didn't do it. And the reason they didn't do it is because the mortar teams that we had, Seabees, returned the fire, suppressed the attack, and the attack went into a lull. We suffered casualties. One later died as a result of the casualties. But we were all waiting for the medevacs to come in to take away the casualties. And one of the medevac helicopters crashed, and we came under attack again. And this time, they were up in the hills, the enemy. They were not only going after the 8-inch guns, but they were going for the CB mortar teams as well. And as the battle unfolded, mortar rounds, when they come in, they walk in. And everybody knew that a series of rounds were coming right for a CB mortar team of 6 people. And everybody also knew that they knew that those rounds were coming in for them. And they didn't jump out of that mortar pit because, you see, their job was to defend our camp. And they kept on returning fire. And as a result, they took 2 direct hits, and 5 were instantly killed. When the battle was over, the bridge that the Marines were providing security were still in the hands of the Marines. The camp, we still controlled it. But on today's date, which enough has been said about the meaning of Memorial Day, 24 men sacrificed their lives on that particular day. 15 Marines at the bridge, a medical corpsman at the bridge, 2 Marines that were in the Marine helicopter, and 6 Seabees. As was said, they lost their lives. They didn't have a life to go on, to have families, to experience the joy, especially as I reflect back 56 years of a life that I have had, that they have not had, 56 years of being able to pursue a profession that they could not, 56 years of being able to have children and watch them grow and have grandkids of which they cannot. And I just want to share with you in these concluding remarks, so just a little bit about them. Very diverse, all races. Geographically, very diverse. They were from Massachusetts. They were from Pennsylvania. They were from New Jersey. They were from the South, Texas, Oklahoma, West Virginia. They were from the Midwest, Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan, and they were from the West, New Mexico, California, and Hawaii. As a judicial officer, we ensure that we make sure that when we have juries, that jurors are diverse. They're a representative of the community when justice is administered. You'd be very proud of the diversity of those young men. But they had one element that wasn't diverse. And the element that they had that was not diverse was their age. Their average age was 20 years old. 2 to 3 years earlier, they were going to their senior prom. 2 to 3 years before that, they were still in high school. So, again, I want to go back to the wall. They all died together. And where they are on the wall, they're on plate 47 on the east wall, and they're within 4 to 5 lines of each other. So again, I want to thank you for giving me the time to tell you their story, and it's really been an honor. And I just know, as we sit here now, because you wouldn't be here if you thought this way, but you start wondering sometimes, especially when you get to my age, is Memorial Day in the eyes of many a 3-day weekend with a barbecue? All right? And your presence here to allow me to tell that story tells me that you think differently. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.